This time, I'll call the Tuesday, February 28th work session of the Harnett County Board of Commissioners to order. I will ask Vice Chairman Morris if he will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Most holy and glorious Lord God, the great architect of the universe, the giver of all good gifts and graces, thou hast promised where two or three are gathered together in thy name, thou will be amidst them and bless them. We beseech thee, O Lord God, bless our present assembly, that we may walk in the light of thine countenance and be admitted into that temple not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, sir. All right, first up, we have a discussion of the growers market. Ms. Lynn Lambert.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm excited to be here this morning. A couple months ago, when we were presented with the start of the plans for our new strategy plan, we saw that in that one of the written goals there was support of a farmer's market. And so, of course, that really falls under the agriculture agencies here within the county, whether it be support of cooperative extension and the soil and water office as well. And so since that period of time, Tim and I have met multiple times to talk about, what can our departments do to further our work in support of a farmer's market. And so this morning, what we really want to see is to gauge your all's interest in what direction you all would like us to take this project or potential goal in our strategy plan. For years, both of our offices have been providing support to farmers that are now serving farmers markets. Of course, cooperative extension helps disseminate that research-based information from our land-grant universities to our farmers to help them have the newest technologies and practices on their farm to produce either, the produce or the meat products that will be taken to a farmer's market. And from the Soil and Water Conservation Office, we help with conservation planning, with layout of the farms. We have cost share funding that we provide for installation of wells and installation of irrigation ponds to help put in drip lines for produce and things of that nature. We also do cropland conversion to grass and fencing and water tanks to support our livestock producers. And so both of our offices are very engaged with our farmers who are currently and potentially serving a farmer's market. And so what we just need to know is really, what direction would you all like us to take this in beyond the services that they're already providing? I don't know if you all are familiar with it, but about 10 years ago, there was a plan, a preliminary drawing, a layout for a potential agricultural complex here near the Agriculture Center on county property that encompassed a multi-purpose type area that would house or potentially house both a farmer's market, an outside green space area, and then an area for livestock shows as well. And so that plan, for whatever reason, kind of slid to the side, and some other things within that plan have developed over the years, but that portion of it never came to be. And so we are ready to support if that's the direction that you all would like to go. But if you all would, I would ask that you please just kind of share some of your thoughts with us so that we sort of know how to chase this rabbit, per se.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Ms. Lambert, on the surface, it's something I would think I would be very interested in and would be beneficial. However, I would have a couple of questions. And one, is there a need? And would there be, do you anticipate there would be participation? I mean, you and Tim working at community all the time, so I think you would have to kind of advise us on that. Secondly, would be who's going to provide the leadership for an endeavor like this? And if it's your office, is that something that y'all would be able to handle? Is it going to put an undue strain on or additional strain with the current staff that you have? I think those are things that we're going to need some input from you folks on before we would really be able to, make an informed answer to your question for us this morning, at least as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Well, as far as the strategy plan goes, when we were looking at that document, figuring out the best way for us to move forward with the information we had at the time, one of the very first things that we proposed doing was to put together a committee to really gauge interest and gauge the needs before we would ever move forward. So Tim and I have spoken about what that process would look like and who would be on that committee. Our first inclination, just from working with the general public, is that, yes, we do think there is a need, and we do think that we have the local farm resources to support a local Harnett farmers market. COVID taught us a lot of things, both good and bad, and I think one of the things that COVID taught us was the importance of a local food system. And if we have a well-ran farmers market with infrastructure and proper management here in the county, it really does help bolster our local food system here in the county, as well as support that in the surrounding counties also, and it leads to increased food security when it comes to, local healthy foods. And when you really drill down deep into it, local food security is directly connected to national security as a whole. And so with our growing population and that increased demand for local foods, I feel like our research will tell us that yes, we do. We currently have multiple farmers that are selling at farmers markets. Unfortunately, because we've not had the infrastructure for a market here, they have gone outside of the county for a number of years to sell. So I will be the first to admit, building a market here is going to take time. It's going to take us winning those farmers back. It's going to take us showing investment in those farmers, that we're here for them for the long haul, for management of a true farmers market. There's a big difference in just having a group of folks come together to sell things than in having a true farmers market. Tim and I have agreed on the fact that if the county does pursue this, it needs to be a true farmers market, well connected with the North Carolina Department of Agriculture. They got the BNC program, the NC Certified Market program. That will not only help to market our farmers market, but it will also help us provide resources to our farmers and to ensure our citizens that visit the market that their goods are produced locally, by farmers that they may even potentially know, and will really help bridge the gap here between our farmers and the new population, the influx of folks that we have moving in that may be 2 and 3, 4 generations removed from the farm. Them having that interface with our farmers at the farmers market, I think will really help bridge that divide and really build upon the community spirit that we have here in the county as a whole, as well as respect for our local agricultural economy. So we do feel like we're going to have the need, but of course we would like to do some further research and put together a committee and have some interest meetings and talk with some key folks before we really take a leap in either direction. In terms of the leadership, to answer your question, neither of our offices are currently set up to run a farmer's market. This would be a seasonal market, so we're looking from, April-ish through September, sometime in that time frame. However, in that, we need a person. I will be very honest. In order to make a market successful, we will need a staff member that we can dedicate to management of the market, building relationships with our producers, our farmers, ensuring that the products are local, ensuring that our vendors are from Harnett County or from a surrounding county. We would also include local craftsmen, handcrafted type crafts items. And so we would need that person to manage, how many of our booth spaces would be crafts type versus agricultural products. We want to have variety at a market, so it's important to allow the craftspeople to come in, but we want agriculture, and I think agriculture should be the focus of a farmer's market, but have a certain percentage of those vendors that could be craftspeople as well. We would need to integrate multiple special events throughout the course of the year at this facility that would change up the client base that was coming in. Um, you know, Special events for younger kids, special events on different topics that give families different reasons to come to the market other than to just purchase the goods that are offered there by the vendors. Something to keep a steady stream of traffic throughout the course of the season and keep people's interest up and make it sort of a fun Saturday event for, people to take on their families on an outing and something interesting and low cost even for them to do. And so in doing that, that's going to take a lot of planning and coordination. The Soil and Water Office would support those types of activities. Cooperative Extension has resources to support those types of activities. Ms. Sherry Bird, she's the president of our local Farm Bureau. She's here with us this morning. Farm Bureau is a great resource to support these types of activities. And so it's going to take a lot of partners and time to make this farmers market effort a success.
If I could follow up with,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, let me just follow up with
Sure.
one question. I can appreciate it. It's going to take a lot of hard work. And as with most things, it'll come down to the leadership as to whether or not this is successful or not. So what I would need to know is this is something that you folks would be excited about.
Absolutely. Any way that we can support our local farmers and agricultural economy is something that we would very much like to be involved in.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Commissioner McCoy.
I have
just
about
wanna
three
say-
questions, if I can.
Okay.
Mr. Weatherspoon,
I was-
you want to defer to him for now?
Well, go ahead.
First question is, have you done a survey of the citizens of Harnett County to see if they're interested in a farmer's market? And have you done a survey of the suppliers to see if they're interested in, is this going to be a weekly thing or a monthly or bi-monthly? Have you done any surveys to find out if
Right.
people are interested in this?
So that is the reason we wanted to come to you all today and see what your interest in a market would be, or if you just wanted us to further, increase our efforts in supporting these farmers. And so the first step in moving forward in this process, we do have a plan to move forward with the citizen survey. We get calls all the time asking, where's our nearest market? Where can I go to a farm and buy such and such product? So we feel like that need is there, but with this committee that we're talking about putting together to start to move forward with this process, if that's indeed the way y'all want us to take this, that survey piece with the citizens and the farmers that would actually be vendors at the market, that's really step one.
My second question is, where do you anticipate having this market located?
That is a great question. In my opinion, in order to build a successful market and show these farmers that are already well established at other markets outside of Harnett County, we're going to need to showcase some type of investment in this program and in this effort for them. And so if we could have a structure that we could have as home to a Harnett farmers market. I think that would definitely bolster our success rate with this market and really put us on a good path. I realize that's not going to be exactly where we start. We've got to work towards that direction, but I do feel like it needs to be within a central location within the county, as well as close proximity to the agriculture center. They're familiar with coming to the agriculture center for their resources. If we are going to support the operation of this market, either or both of our agricultural departments, both cooperative extension and soil and water, to have it nearby the agriculture center, I think would be key in helping us to provide oversight and resources and leadership of a market. Several years ago, the initial plan that was built actually had a potential or proposed location that was in the area that was adjacent to Harnett Regional Water, sort of on that corner of Alexander Drive and McKinney Parkway. That was the proposed site years ago when an initial plan was drawn, which would work wonderful as far as coordination from programs or for programs from a perspective of being so close to the agriculture center and the trails that are established there. That would lend itself very well for future activities and event planning.
Ms. Lambert, you mentioned that you're going to need staff. You said you need to add a person, and then you started talking about what this person's going to do. You sure you need one person or two?
You're right. It can be a lot, and we can certainly always build. But I think as we, begin to take these steps forward in establishment of a market, I think if we start with one position, that would be a reasonable way to begin.
Do you have an estimate on what this person would cost? I mean, what would be the compensation package for this person?
Right. At this point, we would need to do more research on that and figure out exactly what that would look like. And we have some, other markets that are within close proximity, not too far away, that we can really look. And two, we may not look exactly like a neighboring market. We're unique as Harnett County, and so we want to develop something that's really going to meet our needs. But we do have some models that we can look at to gauge what that should be. And that will be part of that committee research to move forward.
Well, my questions are this. First, I must make a statement first. Certainly see the need for the citizens as well as the need for the farmers here. And now I have a question. Tim, did you ever look into the Littleton, what they're doing down there for a little?
Yeah, they were making an indoor, more about it.
So, yes, I reached out to the town of Lillington after it was brought up in the last meeting where we spoke about this, because somebody said that they thought they were going to do that out at the new park where the older community center was, and now they've established a park. I was told that they had tossed around the idea, but they had not moved forward with anything, and what they're looking is what they were considering doing was sort of a pop-up type market, just a handful of times a year, and not truly a certified farmers market.
Well, that answers my question. And I want to add to my comments. I think that we really need for the citizens of this county. And we have a need for the farmers of this county. And I think your department, with Tim, you and Tim, are the appropriate people to come back to us and bring us a constructive plan as to how we do this. And then we'll make a decision how we move forward with it. That is just my suggestion. Because I really do think it's a need. The food stamps being cut, and like you said, COVID has really changed the need for nutrition and food for different families. So as far as Commissioner McCoy, I'm in favor of it. just bring us back a plan. And with that plan, let us know if we're gonna need to staff some people. Another question, would A&T help fund some of this, market?
That is something I could definitely reach out to A&T and ask if they had some funding that could help us on that.
I certainly would appreciate that.
Okay.
And bring that back with the whole information on how we put this together and organize it. Not for us, but for the citizens of this county.
Okay.
I agree with Ms. McCoy. I think there's a lot of unanswered questions at this point, and I would be in favor of continuing to research this, continuing to try to come up with some answers. Has anybody talked to the town of Andrew? The mayor wants to build a farmer's market, a permanent farmer's market. In fact, he asked the legislature for funding last year. Has anybody touched base with them to see what they're up to? I know that's not real centrally located, but
Right. I have spoken with Heather Kiefer, I believe is her last name, with the town of Anger. It's been several months ago. but
she's gone now.
Is she gone now? Okay. Well, we had a conversation about they were looking to move forward with a market in the area. And I've not heard anything recently, but that was going to be, of course, facilitated by the town.
I'm just concerned about the amount of competition, Dunn's got one, Lillington's got one, Andrews got one. I mean, Andrews talking about building a building to house theirs.
Right.
I'm just concerned about the competition.
And we can include that, the committee can include that in our research moving forward.
But anything that what you're talking about is something for the county here, located in the county seat.
Yes, ma'am. Centrally located in the county.
Located, and I think that's a great thing.
In partnership with, our county-based agriculture offices. And there's certainly room for lots of partnerships. And so if there's an opportunity for us to partner with the town of Lillington for some things, partner with Farm Bureau, there's just multiple partnership opportunities that present themselves with the market. It would be a wonderful platform for our 4-H program to utilize for advertisement as well as activities for their kids as well.
Well, if I'm hearing the consensus of the board is to allow you to go back and probably form a committee, get some more answers, and then reapproach us when you guys figure out a little bit more detail.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. That's what we needed today. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Item 4, discussed a request to accept an extension for the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant.
Good morning.
Morning.
This grant, when we originally applied for it, we had asked the funding be used to purchase some monitors and electronic equipment to be placed in the detention center to inform the inmates about rules and regulations, COVID, health information, just to broadcast to them different materials and a guide for how they conduct their daily activities. Since we applied for the grant, we have been able to find another alternative way to accomplish that task. We have tablets in the detention center, and we've increased that number to the point that we can use those tablets to post the information we were going to post on a monitor in the day room. So we went back to the DOJ and asked them, could we redefine and change our priorities for that? And they agreed, and in that they agreed with y'all's approval to give us an extension. So we sort of switched our priorities. What we were planning on using the money now is to buy iPads for our investigative unit. Trying to go away from paper as much as possible, and iPads gives us another means to be in the field, to take photographs and transfer data directly from the iPad back into our report management system when they arrive. So we sort of changed our focus. We found a way to accomplish our first goal in that grant without the tablets and stuff at no cost. So that's why we changed our priorities and then asked for an extension so we can buy the iPads now. There's no cost to the county.
And who would these iPads be used by?
Investigation detectives
Okay.
and narcotics.
I have a question, a little bit off from what you're discussing. But do we have cameras in the jails now?
Yeah, we have cameras, surveillance cameras all around. We've got about 90-some cameras.
Yeah. That was what I wanted to ask because I've heard so many citizens say different things about it. So asking the one that know is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments? Consensus of the board to add this to the consent agenda for extension? We'll add that to the consent agenda for next week. Thank you very much, sir. Unless you have one more.
One more, sir. The second grant's a new grant, it's a 22 grant. That grant, we've requested funding to buy some mobile cameras or pole-mounted cameras that we will mount at key intersections that collects data on vehicles traveling through that intersection. And we would use that information in developing suspects and identifying suspects in crimes because the criminals travel the roadways. That's why they get from one place to the other. So we pick an intersection, and it collects information on the vehicles that travel through that intersection. That information is stored for a short period of time. We cannot store it more than 90 days. And then if we develop information from a crime on type of vehicle, color of vehicle, we're able to view that data and see if we can identify a suspect through that information. Numerous agencies, Raleigh, Fed, Garner. If you listen to the news, this is something that started a few years ago and has great success in solving crimes and identifying suspects in crimes. So that's what we plan to use for this grant.
And no matching funds.
No matching funds.
Questions or comments? Pleasure of the board to add it to the consent agenda for next week. We'll add that to the consent agenda as well.
Thank you.
Thank you now. Carl Davis, discuss capital project ordinance.
Yes, sir. So you got a project ordinance for actually 4 different projects. These are all CIP projects, so you've all seen them before, but this is all part of the SCIF funding, so that's why we're wrapped it up into one. SCIF funding is State Capital Infrastructure Fund is for $630,000, and then we also have the Parks Capital Reserve Fund for $192,000. That's mostly for the Ben Haven project of renovating the fields and playground, picnic shelter, that type of stuff. Other parts of the project include the Boone Trail Monument, the old entryway, doing the renovation there, getting it shored up so make sure it doesn't deteriorate anymore and also become a monument there. That's $135,000 for that, as identified in the CIP. The Anderson Creek Park Phase 2, which is mountain biking trails at that park, so that's adding the second phase. We did the first phase in 2014, and we're coming in the second phase now for $235,000. The Patriots Park, adding a restroom facility out of that site. We opened that facility during COVID. It currently has a porta-john there, which is not really sufficient for what park users are looking for. So that's added for $110,000. And then, as I mentioned, the Ben Haven Community Project. Part of the SCIF funding is going to be used for that. Anything that kind of overflows that we have extra money from the other stuff will go towards that project to upgrade the things. But majority of that is to the Capital Parks Reserve Fund. So, like I said, just 4 projects kind of wrapped into one project ordinance, all identified in the CIP process, but this is official to kind of get us kicked off to be able to start looking at RFPs and other things to get quotes and start the construction.
Carl, how much land will you be using at the Anderson Creek Park for the trails?
It's probably going to be, I don't have the exact number, but it's similar to where in the 200 acres that we originally built on, majority of it is still on that 200 acres. We use right now, there's still a good amount of sections that we have not used. So we kind of, people go on them because there's fire breaks and other things that people can go on the trails there. But as far as actually being assigned and everything else, we've only used probably about 300 of that 1,000 or 1,100 acres. This will probably add another, maybe another 50 to it that we'll look at, so 250 acres of it. Plans for the other stuff, but right now it's just not used. And, obviously, funding's needed to build out those type of things with equestrian trails and other amenities at that site.
Thank you, sir.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
You and I had discussed some things that were needed at Shouttown Park.
Yes, ma'am. They're coming.
Are we still moving on that?
Yes, ma'am. I gave a list to my staff the other day, so they're
Okay.
working on getting those things done.
I'm only asking because the
Yes, ma'am.
citizens are on my back.
I understand.
Any other questions?
No, Mr. Chairman, I would ask that this be, if we move this forward to the regular meeting agenda, that it be placed as a separate item.
I agree with
Place this
that.
as,
I'm
pardon?
in agreement.
I agree with
Good with
that.
that? Okay. We'll place this as a separate item next week on the consent, or not on the consent agenda, on the agenda, rather. Thank you very much. Mr. Rouse, discuss additional WIC client service funding.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The state got some extra federal money for the WIC program and are sending that out to the counties. We're getting $17,513 extra dollars for the WIC program. Has to be spent, utilized by the end of May.
Questions? Pleasure of the board. We'll have consent agenda as well.
For it.
Thank you very much, sir. That was sweet. Add that to the consent agenda as well. Thank you. Discuss the award of Northwest Harnett Elementary School Utility Extension Project. Mr. Steve Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the board. I'm here to discuss the award of the sewer portion of the construction for the new school that's coming on Rollins Road. We bid the water some time ago. In fact, the water piece of that is basically finished. We had to wait on the sewer because we were dependent upon the Serenity development and the sewer getting back to our main sewer line in that area of the county. So that's all complete now. So we're bidding the sewer. We did bid the sewer. You can see you've got a certified bid tab in front of you. We were pretty happy with the bid results. You can see there's a large range there of between the high and low bidders. So we checked out Eberhardt Construction. We have not worked with them before. They're pretty local from Willow Springs, but all our references came back good on Eberhardt. So we look forward to beginning this construction as quickly as possible. It's our understanding that the school, they're going to have folks in there in April. I think they're going to start the changeover from Lafayette to do some work at Lafayette School. So it'll be prior to the normal school start. So we need to get the contractor started as quickly as possible. We're probably going to have to, as soon as we can get it awarded, hopefully next week, we can hurry up and get the contractor in there, get the wet well put down at the school. We'll have to pump and haul for a couple of months just to give the contractor time to get the pump station built and the line ran. So hopefully we can have this done. We're certainly trying to expedite it, and hopefully we'll have it done by late summer when school starts normally. That's our plan. If it has to go any later than that, it shouldn't be more than a couple of months. But we've already arranging to do the pump and haul until this project is complete, the construction is complete. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Okay.
Question? Pleasure of the board to go ahead and put this on the consent agenda as well. We'll go ahead and add that to the consent agenda for next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Nonprofit funding agreements, Ms. Allie Fouts.
Good morning. I have 4 more nonprofit agreements before you today. Just the same drill. The 1.5 million from the state, and these are the 4 agreements that have been signed since I last came before the board. I believe there are 2 more remaining agreements that we're waiting on, and those will trickle in over the next few weeks or potentially months. So yeah, with your approval, we will give the funding to these 4 organizations: Boys and Girls Club, City of Dunn, Coates Chamber, and the Town of Lillington.
Approved.
All right.
No question.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll add that to the consent agenda as well. Thank you. Cooperative Extension's donation of a van to Harnett Powell. Mr. Tim Matthews.
Good morning again. I'm coming before you this morning because in Extension we have 2 15-passenger vans right now. We have a new one. It's a 2014 E350, and then an older one. It's a 2006 E350 van. And we hardly ever use the older van. And so kind of the backstory of what happened is our 4-H agent, Jackie Helton, was in a JCPC meeting, and Harnett Powell's expressed the need for a van in order to run some of their programming. And since we hardly ever use the older van, he made the offer to check and see if it would be possible to transfer that van to them from us. We're responsible for it now, and but we don't really need it, so we'd just like to be able to transfer control of that van to them.
Any issues? Questions? Comments?
I just want to say that I think they need it.
Yeah.
It's badly needed, so I'm in favor of it.
Sergeant Hornsby's already come and looked at it and said it would meet their needs.
It's
So
needed. They're doing a wonderful job out there. He's doing a wonderful job working with those kids.
right.
And I might just add that I do appreciate working together like this with our different departments in the county. Mr. Hornsby expressed the need to us when he presented to us a little earlier, and I really appreciate your willingness to work with him on that. Thank you.
We're always happy to work with somebody. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll add that to the consent agenda for approval as well.
Yes.
Item number 11, discuss tipping fees for Habitat for Humanity. Chad Bean, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thanks for having me. Usually my presentation has a little trashy pun, but I'm going to spare you that this morning. I just wanted to kind of give you an overview. I was asked to kind of give you an overview of our department and kind of how we operate a little bit, and then talk about funding and fees collected and that type of thing, just so that you're aware and that you can make an informed decision. So we have 7 convenience sites throughout the county where we accept household garbage and recycling from our residents. We also have 2 landfills, one at Anderson Creek and one at Dunn Irwin. We have C and D landfills at both. What does that mean? C and D is construction demolition material. So all 2x4s, sheetrock, that type of building material, we manage on site. So we literally bury that trash there on site at both landfills. We also have 2 transfer stations that we utilize for MSW. MSW stands for Municipal Solid Waste. It's your household garbage. We're not permitted to bury that on property on our site. It has to be loaded, transported to Sampson County. We have a contract with GFL Industries to manage that for us. So that's a brief overview, and then I'll talk a little bit about our funding. Of course, we are enterprise fund, which means we want to be self-supported, and that's based on our fees that we collect. And, other words, self-sustainable. We want to be self-sustainable. We have 2 primary sources of fees collected. That's your availability fee, which we don't want to call it a tax, but it does go out in the tax bill. That's $80 per household. Also, our tipping fees are collected straight at the landfill itself. So when you go across the scales, that's where we collect the landfill fee or the tipping fee. A little bit more about the availability fee. What does that cover? That covers your MSW disposal fees. I mentioned MSW is your municipal solid waste. Remember, we have to load those in trucks, load that tonnage in trucks, haul it to Sampson County. Also, it goes toward the operation of our transfer stations. Reserve contingency to replace equipment that we use in those buildings, etc. And I did mention the availability fee is currently $80 per household. Landfill tipping fees, I just mentioned, we do collect strictly at the gate. So if you show up with bulky, large items, mattresses, furniture, things like that, we charge you accordingly at the landfill. Also for yard waste as well. Also our funds for that. We also let me go back to that. North Carolina disposal tax cost. What is that? So every ton that is brought in, we have to pay the state $2 per ton on that as well. So we have some costs for that as well. So our major expenditures, staff to operate, construction of new cells at the landfill. So any expansion projects we do in-house. But of course, there are fees or permitted fees that come along with all that type stuff as well. We manage our yard waste, scrap metal, electronics. There's no charge to our citizens or anyone for electronics disposal, scrap tire disposal, and we cover all the costs of that. White goods, which is your household appliances, refrigerators, stoves, etc. Contracted services, I'm going to get to my notes just to make sure I don't misquote. But we currently have a contract with Republic Services, who operates our convenience centers, does all the hauling from those sites to our transfer stations. We spend a little over $500,000 with them each year for that service. GFL, I mentioned earlier, where all of our MSW trash goes for disposal. We spend about $3.5 million. We are, of course, in inflationary times. We will be looking probably at a 3 or 4% increase for next year's budget for CPI increase. We will be looking at that as well. Also, scrap tire disposal, we usually spend about $150,000 each year for that. And that's basically a very brief rundown of that. And I know you've had a request from Habitat Humanity, and I'll be glad to field any questions at this time while I get a sip of water as well.
Does anyone have any questions?
Okay.
That was your break.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Well, I will ask one. I apologize, but I guess what I was kind of looking for historically, if we're considering discussing this request from Habitat, which comes up next, is have we entertained requests like that in the past? And if we have, what has been the disposition of those requests?
So I will say this, we don't waive any fees currently throughout the county. Any department that has a project, and Mr. Trout, Ms. Honeycutt, at any time interject or correct me if I'm wrong, but we have not waived any fees at all within our departments. So each department needs to budget for their disposal of waste when it comes down to that. I know it's kind of, I don't want to use slippery slope because that has negative connotations, but as a manager of enterprise fund, when we start talking about waiving fees and that type thing, I get a little anxious, a little nervous because we are trying to build our contingency fund, not just to have it there, but there's things, people don't understand about landfills. Once we close a landfill, we're looking at 30 years beyond maintaining that facility. So it's not going to happen in your tenure. It's not going to happen in my tenure, but there's things that we have to finance for and have available to maintain a landfill once it's closed. 30 years is what we have to maintain. So that's methane monitoring, groundwater monitoring, fixing any erosion issues, mowing, things like that. So anytime there's waiving of fees discussion, I get a little nervous just because I do operate an enterprise fund. I don't know if anybody else would like to add anything.
And I understand that enterprise fund operates differently. So I guess what I'm hearing you saying is that this has not been done before.
Right. And I'll add to that, Commissioner, in that we look at this as a need for a policy. I mean, I hate to create a policy, but I think that in order to make sure that we look at each situation fairly, we need to look at creating a policy. And I think what policy has been in the past is anytime we waive a fee, say we waive a building permit fee for a house construction for a special organization, we end up doing a reimbursement to the fund that in order to cover that.
Sure.
And that's approved by the board. And I think those are worthy things to consider. I hate to not consider them. Sometimes they're very worthy to make a good project happen. Same thing happens here. Some of our nonprofit organizations, such as Habitat, have needs, and we may be able to help them. So I think that it would be good for us, and I reviewed the information, and Kimberly Honeycutt presented financial information. I think we have the capability to consider that, and so I think that it would be good if we created a policy to understand what are the limits of our help, what is the consistency, regularity of assisting organizations. Is it a one-time opportunity? And so we need to develop that in order to not put the board in a tough situation every couple of months because some organization requests some discount related to fees that they're having to pay.
Very good. Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Bean. And Mr. Chair, I'm sorry I bled us over into item 11, but anyway, I that's kind of the historical perspective and future advice that I was looking for. Thank you.
Sure.
I'm going to add to that. Maybe I should not say this, but I believe in informing the public. It has been a request before your time, when I was here, and before Brent's time. And each time that the request came, it was denied because they didn't want to start. If you do it for one, you got to do it for others. And I'm all for Habitat. I served on their board for 4 years. But I'm just telling you, it has been requested before, and it has been denied on several occasions.
So if I may, Mr. Chairman, just to kind of add to what Brent and Chad have brought before you. So in the past, one of the things about me being with the county as long as I have, and just like Commissioner McCoy, I've seen it handled different ways. And so I think that to kind of draw back to our planning retreat the other day, the county is growing at such a rapid pace that we need to understand all of the organization and how a decision made by one or five or a department impacts the financial health. So it comes back to actually the financial health of it. So when Chad waives a fee, or when you allow Chad to waive a fee, that's revenue that is not coming into to that department. And when I say Chad, I mean whether it's public utilities, any department that you charge a fee for. So that is a revenue that's not coming in. So when I prepare the monthly financials, and then we also prepare the annual reports, and I make my reports to you, I'm comparing a prior quarter to a prior quarter to a prior year. And we're not talking about probably money that will have a huge impact on those statements. But as many of you have stated, when you start for one, you start for all of them. So what that also creates is, so I'm looking at Chad's information and his revenue stream, and I've prepared a sheet to show the last 10 years. If you would take a look at some of the fees and his operating revenues, expenditures, and then his cash balance. And when we were talking about previously, if you look at his cash balance in, I think, is it 2012, he ended the year with $186,000 in the bank. That didn't even cover his payroll for the next month. So that was when, I had talked about the health of that fund, and then where it has come under Chad's direction and you and the prior boards before you. But what we need is a policy so that he does not waive that, so that his revenues and the operations remain consistent. Because each year during our budget process, you approve a fee schedule. And it is each department's responsibility to carry out that fee schedule. You, as the board, have the authority to waive or refund that fee. But I would ask you to, as we move forward and we're looking at the cost of our services, is what he is generating or any department generating enough to meet that expense or that cost? So there's a lot of things that go into that. So as Brent had mentioned, we're looking at bringing back a policy for you that states, it addresses different areas, just like property tax. We've had citizens, when we talked about condemning properties, well, if you'll waive my tax fee, I'll sign this over to you. Well, general statute does not give you the authority to waive those fees. You have to collect those taxes, but you can refund them if you choose to do so. So I think since those fees are approved and set by a board, it needs to be reviewed by the board if something different is done. But we're working on a policy now that will expressly identify the steps. If you would like for them, parties need to pay those fees and then present back to you and let the five of you discuss. And, so that there is a standard procedure. And I think that will keep a norm. Because like I stated earlier, we are of a size now and have more room to grow, where we really need a defined plan and a policy so that everyone understands. It's not just waiving an $80 fee or $125 or reimbursing. There's a lot more that goes into that, and so I just kind of wanted to add to that from a financial standpoint, if I may.
Well, I just want to say, I'm not against it, but if we're going to put a plan together,
Yes, ma'am.
it should cover every organization.
Yes, ma'am.
in this county. We got to be fair, and that's all I'm saying.
Based on what Brent and I have worked on over the last several days, I think we're going to cover everything.
Okay.
But it won't be 100 pages long either.
Yeah.
I think we've been able to word it so that it's going to be very very easy to understand and very short, sweet, and to the point.
That's all I'm asking, because I know things sometimes are not that way.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm honest. I'm gonna tell you the truth.
Questions, comments? How would the board like to proceed? Wait on the policy?
Mr. Chair, I haven't heard the need for a policy, an established policy expressed by both Mr. Trout and Ms. Honeycutt. I would suggest that we allow staff time to work on that, and at such times they develop a policy, bring it back, and we'll discuss it further.
Yes, sir.
All right, we'll go ahead and do that. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Discuss the appointment of Chance Terrain to the Stop Arm Appeals Board. Christopher Appel. How you doing,
Yes,
sir?
good morning, Commissioners. As you're aware, the Stop Arm Appeals Board is made up of Harnett County employee, a school employee, and then a Harnett County citizen, and then every single one of those positions has an alternate. Larry Smith Jr. is the representative for the county employee position. Carl Davis is the alternate right now. Due to the changeover from Larry Smith from to Hearts to animal services, he is pulled in a lot of different directions. He's very busy over there. He also has some other personal obligations, so he did ask to be able to step down from his position, and so that requires the need to replace him. As for volunteers, and Chance Terrain offered to participate on this board. He seems to be the logical selection in this, and being the new Hearts director. We chose Larry Smith Jr. because he was Hearts director, familiar with transportation and rules of the road, and so he would seem to be a good fit for this. He would serve the remainder of Larry Smith's term, and the terms are 3 years. Already over a year into the terms, will serve a little less than 2 years for the remainder of the term if approved by the board. But if there's any questions, happy to answer them.
Mind to put this for approval? Glad that on the agenda, Madam Clerk.
Timing works out great because Bus Patrol meets next Wednesday.
Very nice. And you're up next for a
Yes.
discussion of the opioid settlements.
Yes, so again, we already had one settlement, opioid settlement agreement, in which the county is due to receive a little over $6 million over an 18-year period. So recently, there's been another round of proposed settlements. This one involves CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart, the pharmacies, and then Allergan and Teva, who are opioid manufacturers. This proposed settlement is around, this is a nationwide settlement, so proposed settlement's around $21 billion. And North Carolina would be set to receive somewhere around $600 million. The breakdown that's been in this proposed settlement is for the manufacturers, Teva would pay $3.34 billion over 13 years. Allergan would pay $2.02 billion over 7 years. CVS would pay $4.9 billion over 10 years. Walgreens would pay $5.52 billion over 15 years, and then Walmart would pay $2.74 billion. That would be paid out over 6 years. So, as you can see by this proposed structure, it's not going to work quite the same as the other settlement, which is over the course of 18 years. This will be, again, more front-loaded, but because of the different time period that each of these would pay, it will be stretched out to 15 years because of Walgreens, but with some of the others that are paying a short period of time, you're going to have different payments coming in different years. They have not stated what that exact amount will be each year yet in this proposed settlement. But I'm here before you because in order for the proposed settlement to go through, a certain number of local governments have to sign on to this agreement, much like the previous settlement. So by the deadline to do so is April 18th for a sufficient number of local governments to sign on to this. This is going to work much the same as the first settlement. So 15% will go directly to the state of North Carolina of that $600 million. 84.62% will go to local governments, and then there's a 0.38% that will go to an attorney fee fund. So what we're looking at for Harnett County, again, using the same percentage as the original settlement, which is about 0.988% going to Harnett County. So you're looking at a little over $5 million that would be coming over to the county over that course of 15 years. So overall, we're looking at over $11 million coming in over the time period of us receiving settlement dollars. So this is going to be a great benefit to the county. As you all know, we are going through a plan. We're developing a plan with a opioid steering committee that Coley and I are in charge of to develop a comprehensive plan to spend these dollars and also search out other grants. We're just at reaching rule. Hopefully, there's some other grant opportunities that help us great, and I think we can have an opportunity of other dollars to come in. So, using this $11 million plus potential other grants to really make a change in this county. So, what I'm here asking today is, per this proposed settlement, the board has to approve a resolution to accept the settlement. If willing to accept it, then we would sign the settlement documents. As part of the resolution, it would be to grant authority to Brent as the county manager to sign off on these documents. I have them. They've been also provided to the board of the settlement, what's called the Supplemental Agreement for Additional Funds, or SAAF. And it will become effective when a sufficient number of local governments have signed on. Depending on when everyone signs on, first payment may come out. They're projecting maybe fall, but again, it all depends on how many sign up. So, happy to answer any questions, but that's the general overview of how this settlement will work.
Questions or
I think
comments?
we ought to approve the resolution, put it on.
Agree.
Everybody go with approval of the
For me,
resolution? Go ahead,
I don't
resolution.
think we're going to turn down money.
Well, you're still up. Discuss resolution to revise the Harnett County Jetport Committee name.
Yes, last one. So, as you're aware, we have a Jetport committee for the Harnett Regional Jetport. This resolution is to change it from the Harnett County Jetport Committee to the Harnett County Jetport Board. It would more accurately reflect kind of what they do over there. And by changing their name, obviously the bylaws would have to be updated to reflect that they would be the board and no longer a committee. Also, in looking at this change, and step back. The committee has already voted to change your name from the committee to the board. So that's a recommendation to you all today to change the name. The other thing is, looking through this, we also need to make one other update to the bylaws that's been included in the resolution. So one of the members is supposed to be from the Harnett County Economic Development Council. Obviously, that was dissolved on July 5th of 2022 and was subsequently replaced by now what's called the Harnett County Economic Development Partnership. And so this would change the membership from the council to the partnership. We currently, the member that was serving as the development council member is also on the Economic Development Partnership. And so I would just request that if we change the bylaws to change the membership, that individual continue serving as the partnership member.
I think we ought to approve it and put it on the consent agenda.
Question,
Yes, ma'am.
does this change the executive committee?
I'm sorry?
Does this change the executive committee?
No, this would have no. This would not change the roles. This
Okay.
they would still be an advisory board to you all. It's same members, everything. This is a
Okay.
name change to the board, and then again, just changing the membership as well from that council to the partnership. Just obviously because we don't have the council anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody have any issues on putting this on the consent agenda? You'll add that as well, Madam Clerk.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Item 15, discuss the advertisement of a lease of county property for a billboard.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'm coming to you today to pretty much ask that you guys approve the legal department going ahead and advertising for the lease of essentially a ground lease for a billboard that's along Main Street in Lillington. Currently, we went through this about a year and a half ago, if y'all recall. There are 2 billboards that are on Main Street that are on Harnett Regional Water property. When we acquired the property, the billboards were already there, and the previous owner had an agreement with Interstate and then Lamar. Interstates came up last year, about a year and a half ago, and so we entered into an agreement to extend that for 10 years. Lamar's is coming up in September of this year. So they've reached out to us asking to essentially enter into a new lease. The lease would be for $2,100 per year, which is it's the same as what Interstate was being charged for the static display. And looking at generally what the breakdown of the costs are that outdoor advertising agencies have to operate these things, it's in line. $2,100 is in line with what you would expect for this area and the carrying costs of rent of what you would expect. So we're here recommending that go ahead and advertise. Now, ultimately, because of the way leases of public land are done in North Carolina, we would have to have a public hearing on this. It would require a 30-day notice, and that notice has to be in the paper of circulation for the county, which would be the Dun Daily Record. So I'm here asking today that we just go ahead and put that on the agenda for next week to go ahead and approve that, and that would result in us having a public hearing on the Monday, April 17th regular session. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
If I remember correctly, Mr. Rohr, with the one we discussed a year and a half ago, is obviously didn't remember, but you've informed me a year and a half ago. If I recall, that land was land that was not suitable for any other purpose that the county could use it for. Is this one in the same?
It's just down the road. It's about 300 feet down the road.
Okay. And the second thing I believe that was discussed with the last one was that were we not to renew that lease, then it would not fall within Lillington's sign ordinance as it existed now, and they would not be able to put one in its place. Is this one in the same?
Yes.
Okay.
So because they've been there for over 10 years
Right.
at this point, they're grandfathered into Lillington's side ordinance.
Right.
So if it ever was no longer used for that purpose, Obviously, the signs belong to the companies themselves. We got the hole in the ground. That's all we got.
Yeah.
So if the sign disappears because they take their property with them, then that's it.
So there would not be an opportunity to lease it to someone else to put a sign there.
That's correct.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions? Pleasure of the board to add this to the consent agenda as well.
Yes.
Thank you. We will add this to the consent agenda as well, Madam Clerk. Discuss the contract to audit county finances. Ms. Kimberly Hunt.
Good morning. I've come before you to ask for your consideration in approving a contract with Martin Starnes, our audit firm. And if you agree to do so, I would request that it be placed on the March 6th agenda. A little bit of background. General Statute 159-34 requires that all units of local government engage an outside audit firm and have their books audited, reviewed, and then financial statements prepared and issued. That's one of the oversight that Local Government Commission has over units of local government in North Carolina. And as such, that oversight also makes, when we go out to the market to issue bonds or go for debt, makes our debt so attractive. And so we've been able to take advantage of very good interest rates. I think you've seen in the past, we've received a lot of premium on our bond money, which has allowed us to do a lot more items. So every year I will have to come before you to request approval, because the statute does require that you approve, that the board officially approve a contract to audit our books each year. So I have attached a copy of the agreement. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Questions? Comments? Pleasure of the board to add this. Good. Very much. We'll add this to the consent agenda. Item 17, discuss moving board meetings to 2 times a month. I will kick this off. Wanted to open it up to discuss, instead of having 4 board meetings, 2 work sessions, and 2 actual regular sessions per month, if we would like to move that to 1 work session, 1 regular meeting. I know that we had discussed this a couple years ago when we had first started on the board, and it was me, Lou Brooks, and Mark Johnson was very new at the time also, so we thought that it would be kind of imperative to keep it at 4 meetings, especially with an outgoing county manager at the time, and we were kind of juggling a lot of other things. So I'd like to bring it up for discussion if you guys would like to possibly move it to 1 work session and 1 board meeting per month.
Well, let me say this. I don't remember that conversation. And I am against it, simply because I personally feel the way we conduct our meetings give us the ample time to at least analyze what we agreed to for this county. And I personally feel that we need a schedule of the work session and the board and the 2 board meetings for us to make good, credible decisions for this county and the citizens of this county. I've always said that if you're gonna run for public office to be a county commissioner, it's tough when you have other obligations. It is really tough, and I totally understand that. So that's what I got to say.
Well, I think with everything we've got going on in this county right now, with the growth that we're facing, I think we're doing a disservice to the citizens to cut the number of meetings back. I will also say, if the board wants to cut the number of meetings back, then the board needs to cut the pay in half.
But that's an automatic. I mean, the pay is based on the number of meetings.
I want it on the record.
Well, Mr. Chair, if I may, I I probably initiated that discussion 2 years ago, simply because the arena that I was most familiar with actually does one work session and one regular meeting per month. I will go on to say, however, that once I became involved in working with county manager and you folks and the citizens, the amount of things that come before us, now I see why that two meetings a month would be difficult. I possibly, if we were going to make any change, I would suggest 2 work sessions and 1 regular meeting, since most of our work is done in a work session. A lot of our stuff is on consent agenda. The only problem that might create, and Mr. Trout maybe could elaborate on that a little bit more, I have seen in this arena the convenience of being able to have a voting meeting twice a month, because things come up and you need an answer, and it doesn't delay things a couple of weeks. So that would be my only concern if we only had 1 voting meeting. So, but that's just kind of where I am today.
Yeah, there would be some, Commissioner, there would be some need occasionally on that second work session if it was, as you proposed, 2 work sessions and 1 voting meeting. There may be items that we would have to add in order to take action so that they didn't wait 2 weeks before being able to be considered. It would require some better forethought regarding staff to make sure the items were placed in the appropriate location. I can tell you that we, I think, could do what the chairman has brought up. It would require some additional work on staff to definitely be prepared, and there would potential for some items having to wait. We would have to look at making sure that we're prepared. There might be times where an item maybe doesn't make it onto the work session. We find out about it, and it would have to be placed as new business. But it wouldn't be a case of new business where you first heard about it at the meeting. It would be new business. It would be in your packet for review so that you would have time to amply review whatever was being presented. Just my experience when I left Topeka, we were doing 3 meetings a month, and we did it slightly different in that we had both discussion and action items on the agenda, so it was a combination type meeting. So that might be that situation where the last meeting, say we did a first and a second and then a third meeting, the third meeting might be a combination meeting where we would have both discussion items and action items. And so but we can advertise that accordingly.
Thank you.
I would ask that this be tabled for further discussion at a later date.
I would add too that, attending the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners, you have the opportunity to talk to other county commissioners from other counties and all. Cutting the meetings could extend the meetings that we would have, as far as time-wise. It would take you much longer to come to agreement, for all the board to come to agreement on a lot of issues. The county is growing, and it's growing fast. So we need to take that into account too. And that's just it. I feel that the way we have our meeting scheduled is good for the commission board here to address the issues that affect the citizens in this county, and to address and give serious consideration to our vote when we cast our vote. So I know I'm only 1 vote, but I'm not for it. I'm just not for that, cutting the meetings.
So hearing the sentiments from the board, would it be fine just to go ahead and leave things the way that they are?
I'm fine with that.
Fine. Just go ahead and leave things the way that they are then?
I'm fine with that.
Whichever way y'all want to go.
Yes. It's a struggle for all of us, but when we chose to run for county commission, we accepted this duty.
All right. Moving on to number 18, review applications to serve on boards and committees. Commissioners, if you will take a look at your packets. Vice Chairman Morris, do you have anything to add on Doug Godwin? He is District 2 rep.
I know Douglas, he's a good fella, he's an appraiser, and he'll do us a fine job.
And I would second that. He has stepped in and done a really good job, even though he's no longer in my district. Even though y'all moved him out. Or we moved him out.
Commissioner McCoy, Ronnie Vinston.
I would like to postpone this because I haven't considered a replacement for Ronnie. He's
Okay.
been serving twice, so I want to put a good person on the board, so give me some time on that.
Okay, and his term expires on the 31st of March.
Okay.
District 2, Patricia Walker-Smith. Have any issues with her reappointment? No?
Mr. Chair, since Ms. Weeks, representing the town of Coates, is in my district, I have no objections to her appointment.
Board of Adjustment, District 4.
I have no problem with that, as well as no problem with the Historic Properties Commission.
And so I believe everything is good except, well, I mean, Mr. Ronnie Vinson's term's going to expire anyway, so we can add all this to the pleasure of the board. Good deal.
Yep.
Add that to consent as well. All right, County Manager's Report, Mr. Trout.
Thank you. The first item that is an item of discussion, which kind of goes in line with the 2 meetings a month discussion. As we looked at the calendar and look ahead, July 3rd is one of our scheduled meetings, which puts us between a weekend and a holiday. And so deciding whether or not we really want to have that meeting so that if individuals, both staff and or commissioners or citizens that might have an issue, we can make a decision to cancel that meeting now and just move items and not have to plan to meet in between a weekend and a holiday.
Would that be a work session?
It would be an action meeting.
Action meeting.
So,
Pleasure of the board.
Good, whatever you want to do. Move it to another day or cancel it altogether.
It doesn't matter, I mean, whatever you all want to do.
The 4th on a Tuesday.
It is.
4th is Tuesday, correct. And so our board meeting is scheduled for the Monday before that.
So the recommendation would be just to cancel that meeting and leave all the other scheduled workshops as they are. Okay, thank you.
And if we have an action item, we'll add it to the work session.
I'm okay with that.
That'll give us a look-see about 2 work sessions.
Yeah, there. Trial run.
A test case. A test
case.
So am I hearing the pleasure of the board is to cancel that meeting?
Okay. And you'll have a vote on the next meeting on the consent agenda to actually do it.
We'll add that to the consent agenda then.
And that's all I have, Chair.
That's it. Any need for a closed session today?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Need for a closed session. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to adjourn. We are adjourned.